Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Mediators New Breakfast Club. This, as you will, I think, just seen on your screen, is being recorded. And I'm now going to hand over to my colleague and friend Dave Owen, who's going to invite 6 first-time attendees also to introduce themselves very briefly. And he's, I think, Dave, you're going to pick ones who are the kind of farthest away. We have people from all over the world. So Dave, over to you, and then over to Dave also to introduce our star panel.
Thanks, Michael. Morning, everybody, or whatever time of day it is with you. As Michael said, I'm going to choose the first timers who are furthest away. So I'd like to start, please, with Yazan Al-Nabir, if they're on, please. That's in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. Not on yet? Okay, in that case, Anil Chang Aroth in Singapore. No. John Costello in Dublin. Not yet. Gayatha, sorry for the pronunciation, Kalia in India. Not yet. Teresa Kenny in County Clare.
That's me, Tressa.
Hello
there. Oh, well done.
Good, we've got somebody.
I got in, so it's Tressa. Hi, Tressa Kenny. I'm actually in County Meath, little way outside of Dublin, and I work in Maynooth University. So I'm an academic there, and I run both undergraduate programs in negotiation and dispute resolution, also postgraduate programs in mediation and restorative practice. I see Tony Watling here, so I would know Tony from, I edit the Journal of Mediation and Applied Conflict Analysis. I'm also a mediator. I'm an advanced member of the Mediators Institute of Ireland and Director of Accreditation there.
Thanks very much. Apologies for mispronouncing your first name.
Don't worry, Dave.
Then I've got Oluwin Athi Olode, sorry, in Lagos. Are you there? No. That's the overseas. I'll come back to anybody. Perhaps then if I can, Mark Apple, I think, or Appel. Are you?
Yes, hi. Yeah, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, my video's not on. My
Okay.
OpDB colleagues will forgive me for having just returned from my exercise, so I'm looking particularly dreadful. Anyway, it's a pleasure to join you. I wanted to attend this program because I think education is so important, and because of the focus on education and mediation education. I've been a mediator for, well, almost too long to mention. I think I just saw a CV that said 35 years. So I've been around the process for a while on several different continents, actively assisting lots of institutions. It's been a wonderful career, and I'm thrilled to see any activity that increases the use of the process, and so the work of this Breakfast Club. So here's to you, and looking forward to hearing the program.
Thank you. Where are you based, Mark?
I live in Malta, but my chambers, of course, is in London. RDB. We have. I guess we have offices all over the place. And I used to tell people I'm based on seat 6B because that was my usual
Your favorite
choice.
seat?
Yeah, but since these days we're in Zoom, I'll have to change all of that. You know.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
David Bilb, are you there, David? No. Julie Blackmer. Julie, if you're there. No. Richard Buxton, if you're there. Amy Cullen. Are you here with us, Amy? We're not doing very well today.
I think, should we stop this, Dave?
I think we probably better had.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I'm Tony Watling. Hello to everybody.
Oh, hi.
Lovely to see Katherine again. And lovely to meet you, Tristan. We've talked a lot. And nice to see you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Right. If I can introduce the speakers in alphabetical order, we've got Michael Bartlett from SOAS in London, Jane Bryan from the University of Warwick, and Emma McAndry, also from the University of Warwick. Bill McKay, should be with us, I'm not sure if he is as yet, from City University. Katherine Stylianou from South Bank University in London, and Ben Waters from Canterbury, Christchurch University in Canterbury, Kent, not New Zealand, I don't think, Ben. Have you been there?
No, it's Canterbury, UK.
Yeah. So I'm going to pass over to Ben to set up who's going to speak when. And if you've got any questions or whatever, please put them in chat, but we hopefully will have 10 to 15 minutes at the end for people to raise any questions. Oh, and I've just seen that Bill McKay has also joined. So Bill, so Bill is from City University. Right, sorry about that.
Thanks, Dave. I'll take over now. So, well, thank you, Dave, and members of the group for allowing us academics to have a platform here. And as one of the group members just said, it is important, I think, to understand the value of education and the role that education can play in spreading the word about mediation. But what we're going to do today as a panel, and there are 6 of us representing 5 universities in the UK, is to give you a flavour of what we do in our respective institutions in terms of dispute resolution and particularly mediation education. And so hopefully you will, by the end of our 5 presentations, get a flavour of what goes on in UK law schools in this particular area, in this discipline. And afterwards, I gather we've got about an hour.
I think you've frozen, Ben.
Minutes. Hello, can you see me yet now? Yeah, am I back? Good. Yeah, hopefully this Wi-Fi network in my domestic residence will hold up, but who knows? We'll do the best we can. I have no power over that, sadly. But anyway, yeah, after we've presented, which will be no more than an hour, we've got about 5, 6, 8 minutes each, something like that. We will give the floor over to you, and you can ask questions, and I gather that you can put questions in the chat as well. Some of us will have slides, and I'm about to share my slides with you now to give you an idea of what we do at Canterbury Christchurch University. So, as I said, I'm Ben Waters. I'm a principal lecturer in law at Canterbury Christchurch University. When I've done my presentation, I'll hand over to Michael Bartlett at SOAS. Michael will hand over then to Emma McAndry and Jane Bryan from Warwick, and they will then hand over to Bill McKay at City University, and then thereafter, following the final presentation of the day, will be Katherine Stylianou from South Bank. So my role at Canterbury Christchurch University is to, if you like, bring awareness to our students and to provide them with an opportunity to learn more about mediation. And one of the things that I do in the undergraduate law degree at the outset when students join us, and this is a year 1 course for undergraduate LLB students is to give them an idea of the number of cases that come to court, those that are commenced as court proceedings in either the county court or the High Court in England and Wales, how many of those actually come to trial. And I think a lot of them who haven't done their background research and their homework are quite surprised to learn that it's less than 4% of cases that actually come to trial. So I then throw out the question then, well, what is happening to that other 96% of cases that don't actually come to trial? Well, many of them are obviously settling early. A lot of them, I guess, are being resolved through either summary judgment or default judgment applications. But a significant number of them, and the statistics aren't available sadly for this, but there is a significant number of cases that are actually being resolved through alternative dispute resolution and particularly mediation. And those students that have never heard of mediation are quite surprised at that point and prick up their ears and think, okay, that's interesting, never really heard about mediation, so I'm going to stay with this to find out a little bit more about what this process is. So I think that's quite an interesting statistic to throw out there to start with. Now, ADR isn't much seen as now, I think, alternative, but more so as appropriate. And this has got a lot to do with the civil procedure reviews, the civil justice reviews that have taken place over the last 20 to 30 years, obviously starting with Wolf back in the mid-90s. Most recently with Lord Justice Rupert Jackson's review in 2010, which provided the opportunity to, and they invariably do, these reviewers have a look at mediation and think, yeah, it's not a bad process, it seems to work in some cases. But Jackson actually dedicated a whole chapter to ADR and particularly mediation, and really felt, you could see from his words in that chapter, that he thought that it was a really worthwhile process. And what he suggested was we need to educate lawyers about mediation. And this is one reason why, as a law school, we thought, well, if mediation is now getting some traction and becoming much more of a mainstream and more appropriate process for resolving disputes, then students have got to know about this. So I think this is something that we need to bring to the attention of our students, and we do through the process of education under the LLB degree at Christchurch. I certainly felt at the time when joining Canterbury Christchurch as an academic way back in the mid part of the first decade of this century, that if mediation, ADR is becoming a lot more important as dispute resolution processes, particularly mediation, then why aren't we teaching this? And therefore, if we're not, are we failing our students in relation to giving them an understanding about what legal practice is really about, particularly those who want to go into legal practice? So we decided to create much more of a socio-legal approach to our legal education, which was an opportunity for us to build into that aspects of ADR and particularly focusing on mediation. And it's interesting, actually, when I did my research in setting up the projects here centered around dispute resolution, that most of the leading law schools in America teach these disciplines, these subjects, negotiation, arbitration, mediation, as standalone topics, and they are embedded within the curriculum. And that, up to that point, certainly, and this was sort of 20 years ago, wasn't happening in the UK. And I think we started, I wouldn't necessarily we started a trend, but we certainly started to focus on ADR as part of the legal education undergraduate curriculum. So what we've done is to create a pathway for dispute resolution within the LLB at Christchurch. And it starts off with an introductory course at year one. The dispute resolution module provides students with an opportunity to understand the various processes. Litigation, of course, they need to know about. We have to understand the continuum in order to make sense of the alternative processes. And we do a lot of comparison between those alternative processes and litigation to get students to understand the benefits of what ADR is. So negotiation and mediation form a really strong part of that. And being able to provide students with the opportunity to learn those subjects also gives them the opportunity to acquire some really important graduate key skills. So I've done research into the value of using mediation as a vehicle for embedding key skills into the LLB curriculum. So communication skills, the ability to be able to work as a team, the ability to problem solve, all those kind of key graduate skills are really important and can be embedded into the curriculum by using these kind of alternative dispute resolution modules. And also, as well as within the curriculum, we can provide students with an opportunity to put their skills into practice. They can learn about the theory, of course, in the classroom, but by putting it into practice, they can really start to understand the value of these processes. So by enabling students to compete in the national negotiation competition and the UK student mediation competition, which we hosted recently at Christchurch, really does give students the opportunity to understand the value of learning about these skills and then putting them into practice. And that brings me on to the more practical side of things, because the early part of my journey into academia was to appreciate, of course, the value of learning skills and putting them into practice. But by setting up a mediation clinic, that brought things alive. So I was able to provide an opportunity for the mediation clinic at Christchurch to be set up, and I seem to have sort of sped along with my slides actually, but just to let you know that the mediation clinic at Christchurch has three roles. The first one is to provide a service, a mediation service to the local community, and secondly, to give the opportunity for an enhancement of teaching through the work of the clinic, and finally to have the opportunity to engage in research opportunities. And I think it is important to understand that the research opportunities are really quite varied and will give a number of possibilities to outreach into the local community and to engage in knowledge exchange, and also to raise funds, to do research bids. For instance, we did it in the early stages, a research and teaching funding bid, which we were successful in being awarded, which enabled us to set up the project and to give us a clinic within the university. And this clinic not only provides a service to the local community, we have a panel of mediators, but also gives students the opportunity to be involved in the clinic, to observe mediations. Some of those students who have actually gone through the mediation module will be able to use their skills as peer mediators. And we do have examples of students acting as mediators and helping to, in some cases, resolve student-to-student type disputes as well. So again, there's a really nice link between theory and practice that is displayed through the work of the mediation clinic here at Christchurch. And of course, undergraduate students are able to participate within the research that we do. We've done 2 or 3 really valuable small-scale research projects, 2 of them into the local and regional solicitors' attitudes to mediation. So that there is some real capacity here and an opportunity to engage in scholarly activity, and of course to publish as well the findings of the work that we do. So I just want to emphasize really here, I think, the value of clinic, and again to say that this can certainly, if you have a clinic, you'll understand the value of being able to inform the curriculum and to appreciate the possibility of being able to potentially do the research that we do to influence policymakers. So I think it has the capacity to go beyond the university. And of course, just to round up really, to bring us up to date, what we now have with legal services education training is a new regime of training for solicitors, and the Training for Tomorrow agenda, which was announced back in 2016, I think it was, has given us this day one competence agenda, which ensures that, or should ensure that law students, when they go through the training to become solicitors, are competent on day one in terms of their awareness of the requirements of legal practice. And I think it's really interesting that actually in stage 1 and stage 2 of the solicitor's qualification pathway is included dispute resolution and aspects of mediation. And this is the first time that legal education at any level has required this teaching. So I think we are perhaps taking something from some of our common law friends and neighbours, particularly Canada and America, in doing this. So whilst we have the 6 foundational law knowledge areas, one of them at stage 1 includes dispute resolution, and the practice contexts at stage 2 also includes a dispute resolution component and assessment area as well, which is really important. So I think to round up, it is important that we're able to give our students a really good sort of understanding of recognised approaches to dispute resolution, and this should be included within our legal education. And the lawyers of tomorrow need to understand the value of the continuum of dispute resolution, and particularly the value of alternative dispute resolution, and particularly mediation, which is hopefully what we're able to achieve through the LLB at Canterbury Christchurch. So that's me, that's my presentation about what we do at Canterbury Christchurch University in Kent, UK, not New Zealand. And I'll now stop sharing my screen and hand over to Michael Bartlett at SOAS, who will be able to tell us what he does at the School of Oriental and African Studies at London University. Okay, Michael.
Thank you very much indeed, Ben, and the invitation to be here this morning. I also just want to say to Ben what a great pleasure it was to take part in the student mediation national competition at Canterbury, and I hope all other academics will encourage their students to do so. It's a really wonderful opportunity.
It's not just because SOAS won, of course. Well done.
So, I mean, teaching ADR at SOAS is a great pleasure. It's a really exciting place to teach mediation in particular, both because of the international students that we have, but also the kind of extraordinary diversity that the university community has. I teach ADR, principally mediation, in 2 contexts. In an LLB half module, which is taken in the 3rd year, so students already have an idea of civil litigation and some of what it involves. They have an idea of the principles of law. And I teach that half module in the context of civil procedure. We start off by looking at negotiation and practical exercises in negotiation, some from Harvard's project on negotiation. We look at a prisoner's dilemma game to look at game theory of the tension between collaboration and contestation, and then move into looking at mediation through firstly community, then civil, and then family community, and then family mediation. And all of these are done in each instance with either looking at scenarios in which students talk through whether or not mediation would be suitable, or in the case of community and civil mediation, role plays which are tailored to helping the students develop those skills. And then at the end of the course, we look at issues such as Part 36 settlements, costs, mediation case law, and briefly in this course look at some of the particularly American critiques of mediation, Biss, Owen, Feldsteiner, and a little bit about Mark Galanta and the vanishing trial. So mediation is seen in the context of civil procedure. It's affirmed as a hugely useful skill alongside negotiation skills for any practical lawyer to have. And the theme of the course is really context is everything. Where is mediation suitable? Where isn't it suitable? But also building up this idea that even if you're not going to mediate, even in the context of adjudication, those mediation skills, empathy, autonomy, enabling the parties to put what's most important to themselves at the center of a dispute are really important and vital in settlement, whether or not it's done with a mediator formally. And so that will be taught over a period of 10 weeks with lectures, presentations of 2 hours, and then 8 supplementary tutorials to give the students in smaller groups an opportunity to try out some of those skills. I also teach, which is where SOAS started, a course for postgraduate LLM students and also some students on an MA program, which looks at mediation over a period of 20 weeks. The first 10 weeks of this, and this is now split into 2 modules in part to, so it will fit with the semesterization process, which SOAS, I think, is committed to. The first unit looks at the practical skills, replicates a lot of the material that we have in the LLB course, lots of role plays, negotiation exercises, again looking at civil, community and family mediation, and a little bit at context and a little bit at history. The second term, which is another 10 weeks, each of them being 2-hour seminars or role plays in some situations, looks at mediation in a comparative context. And this is what's so fascinating in SOAS, because we have students, and it's a much, much smaller course. I think the maximum size I've had has been 12 on this course. We've had wonderful students who've been mediation practitioners in China, a judge from Zambia, a judge from South Korea, people who've set up their own mediation centers in India. And just to learn from the skills of the people who are part of the course is a kind of wonderful experience. In China, for instance, I mean, Ben was talking about teaching mediation as not so much alternative dispute resolution, but appropriate dispute resolution. In China, mediation is the dominant form of dispute resolution, far, far, far more used than litigation, in a very, very different way from this country, kind of imbricated into the civil justice system. But a fascinating fact that I didn't know before reading an article by Michael Palmer, who set up the course at SOAS, was that immediately before Chief Justice Warren Burger had made his famous call that adjudication wasn't the best way of settling disputes in the United States, he had been to visit a people's mediation center in China, and that this was a part of the context that he came from in terms of his thinking about reorganizing the United States civil justice system. Whether or not that was successful, I leave it to you to judge. But the opportunity of having a look at mediation in a comparative context also means to say we can look a little bit at Africa and the way that contemporary mediation draws on the support that it has from traditional African dispute resolution, which took place in pre-colonial contexts outside of the state and outside of judge adjudicated disputes. And we look a little bit at mediation in Asia, sometimes in Africa, sometimes in Pakistan. And what's been kind of hugely enjoyable for me on this course is inviting in guest lecturers, whether from one of these areas, or we've had a guest lecturer talking about Islamic dispute resolution and Islamic mediation. And if any of you who are coming from other countries would like to offer a guest lecture, we are always welcome to that. And it's a real delight to have people doing that. I realize there are many other people who want to present, so I won't go on any longer, but hope we can look at some of these issues in terms of questions and discussion after this session. But it's a huge privilege to be teaching ADR, huge privilege to be preparing students on their first step, because it's only a first step towards becoming mediation. And one of the greatest pleasures for me has been having a couple of students who've come to the Mediators New Breakfast Club and spoken of how much they've enjoyed that, but actually hearing about mediators have gone back and developed their practices in the countries they've come from. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Michael. All right, I'm going to hand over to Emma and Jane now from Warwick University.
Okay, hi everybody. Lovely to be here. I mean, this is a topic that I could talk about all day, but I will try and keep it brief. And I want to devote more time for Jane's slot, because she's going to explain exactly what happens at Warwick. But for my part, I just wanted to give some background really as to how my affiliation with the University of Warwick came about, and the work that I've been doing with them there. And then I'll be handing over to Jane for a much fuller explanation of all the wonderful mediation work that's done there. So my first career was as a commercial litigator, facilitating the brutal nature of litigation. Yes, I am sorry, but then I did fortunately see the light. I'm now in my third and hopefully final career as a full-time mediator and mediation trainer. But in between those two careers, I went into academia for about 15 years at UCLAM. Although I had experienced mediation from a lawyer's point of view as a litigator, it was in academia teaching law and litigation where I became really passionate about mediation, and as a result became a reader in mediation. Now, my own experience in litigation compared to that of mediation meant that I felt very strongly that students should learn about the benefits of mediation. Those who are going to go on and deal with contentious matters should be well equipped to give a full and thorough explanation to their clients of all the methods of resolving disputes available to them and the associated benefits and disadvantages, so that their clients can make an informed choice. And I'm going to point back to Ben saying appropriate dispute resolution. I love that swap of the A there, appropriate. And having said that, I couldn't agree more with Lord Newberger in 2010, who said, for mediation to become second nature, we need to embed that culture from the very beginning of a lawyer's training. I mean, if you think about it, like Ben said, law students who go on to do litigious work will become the gatekeepers of the future for mediation work. So in my role at UCLAM, I set up a centre for mediation, which housed training, a mediation clinic, like at Canterbury, and mediation research. I had a number of reasons for doing this. I wanted students to acquire the mediation skill set. As you know, these are invaluable transferable skills. And for law students, these can help with a whole variety of things, like interviewing clients, negotiation, and everyday use, of course. I mediate between my children on a daily basis, especially now they're both teenagers. I also wanted those who had trained in mediation to have a sort of a safe space, a real life environment in which to practice their skills and be supported by more experienced mediators. And finally, as a lecturer and tutor, I witnessed firsthand the difficulties of student life, which I had conveniently forgotten from my own time as a student, not because it was so long ago. I came to realise that disputes between housemates, presentation groups, societies, landlord-tenant, they would all benefit from a pro bono service. It really was, as we like to say as mediators, a win-win situation, with students able to practice their skills on students who had disputes to be resolved. I mean, some of these students were extremely distressed, vulnerable. You think about it, being away from home for the first time, some were even on the verge of leaving uni because of some hellish conflict, but they were soothed and comforted and retained by the magic that is mediation. Although I did leave UCLan to pursue mediation in its totality, I still held on to that really strong belief of educating students and of helping them with disputes. So it felt like fate when Jane Bryan got in touch, having seen my educational background. And in just over a year, Jane has achieved such an incredible amount at Warwick. And I'm really honoured to be affiliated with Warwick and support the amazing work that they do there. But I'll let Jane explain exactly what's going on at Warwick.
Thanks, Emma. That's quite an introduction. I hope my slides and my story live up to that, but thank you. So just a little bit about me. Hopefully so I'm a reader in Warwick Law School. I used to be a solicitor before I had children and moved into academia. I'm also the academic lead for the university's Community Values Education programme, and I'll talk a little bit about how my work around values in the university and respect and creating a positive culture at the university aligns very closely with the mediation clinic, of which I'm the lead, with Emma being the external consultant. So I'll just move to the right slide. So this is how we present ourselves. We're a peer mediation service offered to staff and students. We offer training to staff and students in mediation, conflict coaching, and a range of other things, working very closely with Emma McKay to deliver that online. And we also then offer mediation services to staff and students. And the idea is that if staff are in dispute, they will either refer themselves or they'll be referred by the HR team. If students are in dispute, they will be referred by the student discipline teams, the residential teams, the personal tutors, or refer themselves. And the mediators will be hopefully students for student disputes, staff for staff disputes, and a mix of staff and student co-mediators if there's a dispute between staff and students. So we really want to ensure that it's a peer mediation. So that space, people in dispute will be able to see someone like them in the room to help them with their issues. So it's a pilot at the moment, but it is, sorry, I'll go on to that. It's got two strands. We offer the training, as I said, and the services. It's a pilot at the moment, but it is doing very well. It's getting a lot of high-level support, and the university is just trying to work out where it can sit, because being a hybrid of staff and students, it's not got a natural home. So we're just working that out. But as I said, it's getting a nice steady stream of cases and training opportunities, and I'm very pleased with how it's going. Let me just go to the next slide. So everything Ben and Emma have said, and Michael, resonate with the reasons why I got in touch with Emma on that rainy Saturday afternoon to try and see if she could support me and offer some help to embed mediation training within the law student experience at Warwick. It was during COVID lockdown, so we were not able to offer the usual extracurricular activities that we would usually want to give to our students at Warwick. I was also very aware of what I perceived to be the future of the legal profession, as Ben and Michael and Emma have already said, and keen to enhance our students' employability. So I thought that offering extracurricular mediation training might be a way for them to connect, learn online, and to gain employability and transferable skills. So we acted when the CMC allowed online training to be recognised, and so it was a good opportunity to offer this to our students. We extended that so that the students who had been trained with us, a week online course, could actually embed those skills and work towards accreditation by extending Warwick Mediation to offer mediation services as well. Again, in the same kind of trajectory as Ben and Emma have already described at their institutions. I'm a member of the university's student discipline panel. I'm also a personal tutor. I also work at the university, so I'm kind of aware of all of the issues around staff and student conflict that arise. And at the time, there was no alternative to either letting things fester, which would often lead to people leaving, or to going through formal processes of complaints or grievances. And I think this is why it's been welcomed so much within the university, because it is an approach that fits within our kind of context of wanting to use dialogue to resolve issues and to try and offer some way for staff and students to enhance their experience at Warwick and to stay, because as we know, when there's conflict and it's unresolved, it can be very difficult for everyone. So what we did, sorry, I've just flicked over that slide, but I've really mentioned it. It's the aligning to our Warwick values of respect, communication, having a positive campus where everybody feels included. So in February 21, we offered some online mediation training. I was lucky enough to be able to get funding for that. We only had 10 student places and 340 law students applied. So there was a real desire for that. I purposely wanted to have a mix of staff and students, undergraduate and postgraduate training together to test how that worked. And it was a really great environment. Actually, it really flattens some of those traditional hierarchies that we see in the teaching space, because everybody was new and it was very experiential and we were all practicing role play together. So it was a good success, and we've had lots of different iterations going forward, either funded or substantially discounted. Again, always working with Emma, who is our go-to mediator at the university for resolving our disputes and also for providing our training. What we learned that was staff and students could learn very well together and in the same space, and that's the model we've continued with. If I had more workload allocation, I'm a bit busy with different roles, then I would be looking to do this as an in-curricular assessed module, but at the moment the students seem happy with sprint intensive courses, and that's all I've got time for at the moment, to be honest. So that's maybe part of the future, but it's we're focusing on the intensive courses at the moment. This is just some of the feedback. Sorry, I meant to start my timer. I'd got it all ready for 5 minutes and then forgot. So I don't, Ben and Emma, you can tell me if I'm going way over. The mediation services are, as you would imagine, completely voluntary, completely confidential, and there's no fee to Warwick staff or students. We don't charge out for our services. How that's going to be sustained is one question we're going to look at, but at the moment it's free to everyone. It's got the usual referral processes that you'll all be really familiar with, so I won't go through those, but we are working through various different teams to build trust in this service, and it's, as I said, becoming very popular. What we don't do are the usual things as you wouldn't expect us to do. We are, however, exploring restorative justice at the university for some of those instances where there's been clear wrongdoing, to enable dialogue to be used as a means through that. And the future plans are, we are hoping to work with community mediators who are in the community rather, newly qualified, so that we can branch into resolving community problems. As I said, restorative approaches is also something I'm very excited about at Warwick, and we're getting somewhere there. And using more dialogue to build community. The other thing that isn't on the slides, but I just wanted to mention, is we are creating an international student mediators network. We've got country leads in Australia, America, Ireland. Tressa Kenny, who introduced herself at the start, is very key to the work we're doing, so it's great to have her here, and Emma, so that we can get students researching around mediation, having mock mediations, and generally having that international at home experience that some of them are missing because of the restrictions on lockdown. And we're doing, Emma and I are doing that in partnership with Kudrat Dev from a mediation training company in India. And that's it. I'll put some links in the chat in case you want to find myself and Emma later. And I'm sorry, Ben, if I've gone way over 5 minutes. But
no problem. Thank you, Jane. That was really interesting. And Emma as well. Thank you. Bill, move on to you from City University.
Yes, good morning, Michael and everyone. I'm going to try to share. If you just give me a moment, please. I'm just going to try. I don't know whether this will work or not. If not, I'll just carry on without it. It doesn't look like it is. Sorry, I had some slides prepared, Michael, so I'm just going to go ahead without them. My viewpoint on what I'm going to say is basically based on both my time as director of the legal practice course at London Metropolitan University, where my background as a solicitor meant that I was leading the course there, where we actually introduced part of the legal practice course for solicitors required not only the necessary core skills, but also some elective subjects. And so I introduced a particular elective over 9 weeks on mediation with some arbitration included as well. That's very much workshop style. And now that I'm at City University, which I've only been at for a little while, we're trying to develop further, probably more this holistic approach. With transferability and portability, because my background largely is both training people to be solicitors and on the bar course, because of course we don't have a fused profession like in the US. And we're always very conscious of the fact that, to be honest, to be blunt about it, those students who actually do the legal practice course or the bar course, to be honest, a good number of them will not end up being barristers, or not so much, but a lot also not being solicitors. I mean, there's about 500 pupilages available a year for the bar course, about 6,000 students doing it. So we're very conscious of the fact that this transportability has to be important. So we try to build in awareness of business as well, commercial awareness. And when I say holistic, what I'm really talking about is a situation of making sure that we're taking into account the entire person involved in the dispute and the entire dispute itself. So we've kind of drifted into a little bit of the psychology of mediation. We've looked at, and as I say, this is very much workshop based. And even the lectures now, we're working towards, rather than having an hour's lecture, whether it's recorded or whether it's face-to-face, we're now, we've had some research showing that the attention span drops in less than an hour. So we actually have little snippets of lectures. We have about 15 minutes, like podcasts on particular issues for substantive law. And then we focus very much on the workshop. But we're very much conscious of the fact that a lot of these students will probably go into something else, whether it's banking, commerce, and industry. And so we also focus on things like workplace mediation as well to make them conscious of that. And so really, we're trying to see a sort of overview of it for them. But at the end of the day, of course, they have to pass the exam. So they're very much focused on, really what they have to do to pass the exam. And so although we encourage things like the excellent Worshipful Company of Arbitrators competition and Ben's excellent competition down in Canterbury, sometimes it's difficult to get students to engage, to be honest, we find, because it's the old story. If it doesn't count towards my mark, I've got enough to do. I've got a job as well, and so on. So we're also kind of trying to, we actually took a team to Paris a number of years ago for the International Chamber of Commerce competition. And what struck me when we're up against teams like Rutgers University was these students were getting learning credit for their mediation involvement in the competition. We hadn't evolved to that, and we're trying to look at that, because obviously then they get the learning credit from taking part as well. So these are things we're thinking about. And also, as I say, if they are going to go into commerce and industry, we're looking at deal mediation as well. And so it's a case of maybe trying to get a good arrangement in place which foresees problems for the future as well. So it's not all dispute mediation, we're looking at deal mediation. So the elective that I created at London Met, as I say, that's an optional elective. And now I'm at City, we're trying to develop further outside links as well. So one of the other things we're thinking about is things like how we can actually get engaged with outside organizations. We have an LLM, I can't claim credit for it, but we do have an LLM, an ADR, and we get a lot of international students for that. My personal view is that the university, we're trying to develop more bespoke courses. I actually ended up in Beirut about 6 years ago doing a 3-day mediation course over there for non-governmental organization people mediating with refugees coming across the Syrian border for where they could stay, with mediating with the landlords. And we also had commercial lawyers from the center of Beirut. And so we tried to develop these links. And actually one of the commercial lawyers had just come over from Beirut to do our LLM. So we keep in touch. And we're trying to develop. So we're trying to encourage staff to get out there and spread the message a little bit as well. So those are the sort of things we look at, but also we make people aware of the fact that now it's going to be so much IT based. I mean, I think we tried to take the view, I think it was the Lord Chancellor who said recently, it's no longer alternative dispute resolution. It's a main aspect of the dispute resolution process in the UK. And so we're trying to sort of make people realize that this is going to be something that is going to very much get into the litigation process online. There's no doubt about it. There's going to be more online dispute resolution. We're going to have to bring in some experts on things like analytics, because I think online there's going to be more IT, how the human brain works, and how analytics can perhaps anticipate some of these things. This artificial intelligence is going to come in, blockchains coming in. So we have to be aware of all that, I think, as well. And so we're trying to bring in expertise to develop that. But I think really for us, we want the student to go out feeling they can use these skills, whether they end up being barristers or not, because as I say, quite a lot of them, quite frankly, won't numbers wise, well, not for a good few years. Another thing we're very conscious of is there'll not be mediators probably for quite some time. So we do focus on the mediation skills from the point of view of representing clients in mediation more at the moment. And so we tend to focus more on that than the complete training to be a mediator, which we tend to take the view might come a bit later. And we also try to get them just to be aware of the international aspect of it as well. We encourage them to join Chartered Institute of Arbitrators student membership, which I think is still free. And so we're trying to get them sort of out there in the world once they leave us. It's only with us for about 9 months. So we're trying to get to that situation where they're aware of the transportability, as has been said earlier. So, I think the other speakers talking about outside links, I think that's right. And, we also relate to, international relations. We try to give them a final session, which goes a little bit woolly perhaps, but yes, disputing between the Tamil Tigers and the Sri Lankan government. We give an example of, the attempt to mediate. And so we give them that overview. We give them as a final thought, just what's really going on out there in the sort of more international context. And so that's really where we're coming from. And some cultural appreciation, just to add finally. We haven't got a mediation clinic yet, to be honest. We do have a pro bono clinic, so we're trying to develop, hoping to develop a mediation clinic, but cultural appreciation as well. And so, the online mediation, has created arguably a safer space for vulnerable people. So we make people aware. We try to get the students to get involved in cultural associations to get them involved in that as well. And I'm very interested to hear what's been suggested about international student mediation networks, for instance, because I think that's an excellent way of making people more culturally aware. And that's all really I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. So finally, we come on to Katherine Styliano from South Bank. Katherine.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I haven't got any slides to share, so I'm just going to chat, if that's okay. Just to introduce myself, I'm Katherine Stylianou. I've been a family mediator since 1995, I think. And I've been a lecturer at South Bank University since 1991 as a sort of part-time sort of bolstering up my income as a young barrister. I began teaching ADR with Linda Mulcahy at South Bank, and I want to say 1996. So we originally had a very theoretical course that ran across an entire year. And then Linda got very busy with research into our local community mediation project in Southwark. And she handed the course over to me. And I began to develop 2 different modules because we were also kind of revalidating our law undergraduate degree. And I was very interested in looking at the skills. And I'd also started getting into training mediators and subsequently started becoming a professional practice consultant for family mediators, supervising their professional practice. And so skills became a very important part of what I did outside of South Bank. So, but I also felt it was a really good and important aspect to start teaching undergraduate students, whether they wanted to be lawyers, whether they wanted to be mediators, whatever they wanted to be. I kind of felt these were really important life skills. So conflict management skills being very, very important. So I developed a kind of 2-pronged approach, which was a module which was theoretical, talking about the landscape of disputes, understanding the emergence, a lot of kind of American literature that and the research that was done in the 70s, and just began to do kind of focus a little bit on that, looked at the spectrum, and it kind of very early on, I think even in 1996, we were trying to disabuse students of this alternative word and looking at the fact that, you know, this is not an alternative. If you look at the landscape of disputes. And so we were really sort of focusing on trying to do what Mark Gallanter was doing, which is turn the telescope the other way round and look at what sort of was going on in the world of disputes. And also part of the ADR course was also looking at the role that lawyers play in transforming disputes and the nature of lawyer negotiations. So that, and then we would look at, and so what I did was with that first module was also tie in some specific context. So students could see some specific context for mediation, family, of course, which was what I was doing, but also civil and commercial. And I had some students that an ex-student who I was teaching on the Westminster Masters course, who is from CEDA, and he used to come and talk to my students. I still get CEDA people coming to talk to my students. And also we have our local community mediation project, who have always come in and been very interested in our students, many of whom have gone and worked with Dave Walker at Southwark Community Mediation Project. They've done things like been on their management committee, they've volunteered as community mediators, they've done funding bids for the service. So that was kind of what my ADR module began to look like. So it was very, you know, it was a 1 semester module. So that's kind of, you know, we went from a kind of different system, you know, term system to a semesterized system. And so that's how it then got organized in this new validation. And then the mediation module became a very skills-based module where students will start with looking at negotiation strategies, but also specifically looking and being aware and becoming conscious of their negotiation skills and what they do when they negotiate. And that then kind of works towards looking at how negotiations and why negotiations can break down, and then looking at how their mediation comes in to kind of catalytically battery power the negotiations again. And so the module is very skills based, but it's more of an awareness of the skills, because I didn't think it was right to train the students to become mediators. They had other things to focus on, but I felt it was important to have some experience of the skills and an awareness of what mediators do, thereby sort of distinguishing in some ways from what lawyers do, and also distinguishing the skills. So what I then did was, because I became very interested in training, and I'm a trainer and have been for a number of years now with Lorraine Bramwell Associates, and in fact Tony Watling, who's somewhere on the screen, I can see him down there. Tony and I, he took me under his wing and helped me with training, and in fact Tony's trained me in so many different contexts as well. So we have done some training for Lorraine Bramwell Associates many years ago, and I still do that. I thought what I would do was give students an opt-in course, rather than make them all become mediators and have to prove themselves as mediators, which I don't think is right at their stage. I had an opt-in skills course, which was a kind of add-on, and College of Mediators has recognised it, and still, I think we've renewed it recently, although we haven't had a lot of uptake for the skills course recently. I think the kind of pandemic sort of made students kind of feel like they had enough to cope with. So that it's coupled with a kind of little add-on of a couple of days of a skills course and an assessment that counts as a recognised training with the College of Mediators. And I think since then, I've also developed the mediation negotiation skills module to fit into our LLMs. So we've got, I don't know if it's still, but we had an LLM in civil litigation and dispute resolution. And the module, I kind of taught the ADR bit on the civil justice module. And then I offered the mediation negotiation skills, which was a sort of upgrade to an M level for that. And I also offer it to our international dispute resolution, commercial dispute resolution LLM students. So they have they take the mediation negotiation skills module, because it's just a sort of an awareness module, and they get a taste of the skills. There's a sort of self-development aspect to it, as well as a kind of, there's some life skills, but also for the LLM students, what I've done and what I do with all of the students for in ADR as well, is I give them an option as to what context they'd like to research. And so there's a research element to the option. And in the LLM international commercial dispute resolution, I have a kind of option where they can choose an international conflict and analyze it with reference to international conflict resolution theory and peace studies and international relations, and to sort of really get to grips with sort of what went well, what didn't go so well. So it's a very sort of practical, like they pick a case study themselves, but very practically look at it from that international context. They can look at international trade negotiations, whatever they want, as long as they are incorporating and analysing the international conflict resolution as well. So that's really that's really what I offer at South Bank. I have sort of been involved in other LLMs, and I was involved in an MSc with Birkbeck, an MSc in conflict management, mediation conflict management, and that was a very interesting experience, and that unfortunately had folded quite a few years ago. Yeah, that's me, and that's South Bank, and thank you very much for listening.
Thanks a lot, Katherine. I'll hand back to Dave now, and you can do your chairman bit.
Thank you, Ben. We've got time, I think, for 2 or 3 questions. So if you could go to the reactions icon and raise your hand, and then we'll take whoever comes up first, please. Nick Mellis, excuse me, Nick Mellis.
Morning, everyone. Enjoyed the conversations around education and promoting the use of mediation on different types of legal courses. My question relates to kind of and is probably addressed to all the speakers, and relates to the importance of not just considering mediation as a form of dispute resolution, but also other forms of dispute resolution, such as negotiation or arbitration. How do you educate students to consider not just mediation, but other forms of ADR as good ways to resolve commercial disputes?
I don't think we've got time for everybody to comment on that. So could one person volunteer? Whoever wants to go first?
I'm happy to take that, Dave.
Thanks, Ben.
Yes. Nick, thanks. It's a really important question. I think it goes back to something that I was saying in my talk about what we do at Canterbury Christchurch, and that is to put mediation into some kind of context which fits within the dispute resolution continuum. And by that I mean it's important for students to understand that mediation doesn't just exist in a vacuum on its own. It's comparable to other processes of dispute resolution, whether you call that alternative or not, but particularly very distinct and separate from litigation. So we teach the whole range of dispute resolution. So this is why I'm saying the year one course is a dispute resolution course. Students understand about the principles of negotiation, mediation, and also arbitration, but as well as that, they will compare that with a couple of sessions on litigation. And I think Michael mentioned the role of Part 36, which is important when he was talking about what he does with his students. And again, those kind of principles embedded within court rules are really important for students to understand. If students think that going to court is all about trying to get a decision by a judge, then they're wrong. And I think that kind of misconception is resolved by the end of this module, because students start to understand that there are still options to resolve cases once a case has been started and court proceedings have been commenced through mechanisms like the Part 36 settlement procedure. So we do comparisons. We do provide students with the whole panoply of dispute resolution pedagogy, if you like, and an understanding of different types of processes is very important, so that they can actually contextualize mediation within that.
Thanks, Ben. I think we've got time for two more. I've got Carl. Carl Islam, would you like to?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Just very briefly, 3 points. Just a quick plug for 2 articles I've just written. They're both for Taxation magazine, which is the UK's leading weekly tax publication. The first one came out last week, the second one was out yesterday. First one makes the connection between mediation and tax efficient settlement of really any dispute, but my field is probate and trust disputes. It discusses it in that context. The point being that you can use mediation to unlock hidden value and create common ground. But in order to do that, you need to involve usually a chartered tax advisor, which leads me on to another idea, which I'll mention at the very end. I'll just summarize it in literally under 30 seconds to 1 minute. Second article is about a different idea, which connects mediation with the concept of problem avoidance as a lifetime proactive, excuse me, I just need to disarm my phone, proactive estate come business succession planning process, because particularly for clients who are wealthy individuals who have family located all over the world, and you've got a very dominant patriarch, sometimes there is a dynamic which prevents people in the family from having an open conversation about how to put their house in order. And mediation, provided the patriarch invests in it, pays for it, and basically instigates it with the commitment of the other participants, is a way of starting the dialogue. And that leads me on to the third idea and an issue just to throw out to you all, possibly for a future talk to be given by somebody who has done this. And I'm only recently qualified and I haven't done an international Zoom mediation. It's the issue of what you need to be aware of and what you need to avoid to prevent things getting worse, where you are dealing with participants who are located in different time zones and come from different cultural backgrounds. because one of the things that I became aware of as I was writing these articles is the enormous potential now, as we see today, to actually avoid having to go to court or to use mediation as a forward planning problem avoidance exercise where the key players are located in different time zones around the world. So that's all it was. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl. I'd like to thank all the speakers now. There are a couple of things before we finish the formal part. Firstly, I'd like to mention that International Mediation Awareness Week is coming up, which is being organised by Will Chalmers of Mediation Network. Mediator Network. Are you there, Will?
Hi, Dave, thank you. Apologies, just recovering from COVID at the moment. So yes, lovely, thank you for the mention.
Would you like to mention a bit more about it?
Thank you. I wanted to
Couple
say
of minutes.
Yeah, first of all, well done to the speakers, because I think it's an amazing job you're doing with this peer mediation and educating the next generation. Something that's obviously close to my heart as well. Getting the next generation engaged with better dispute resolution is the key, I think, to getting the next generation engaging with mediation per se. So that's really, really good. Good news, good stuff. International Mediation Awareness Week, something we started, this will be its 3rd year, so we started a couple of years ago. And it grew last year, so we had 7 regions around the world taking part, about 124 different sessions online, and some fantastic, formidable speakers. So this year should be even bigger. We want every single country around the world to be part of it. So working on a sector by sector basis this year, which means we can drill down into showcasing excellence in particular sectors. And this year we're focusing on education, that's one of the sectors. Finance is another one of the sectors. We're looking at the armed forces as well, and healthcare are the key areas that we're looking at this year. Each day will be its own mini conference, effectively, and we feel that every single mediator should be involved in such events like this. Everything takes place online, so fully accessible. The entire event is absolutely free, remains free. There are different ways if you want to sort of have VIP access and things like that, but the point of this is to make sure that we engage with the non-mediation community. So that week takes place in November, but there's a lot of work that happens between now and November. And so if you are interested in being part of International Mediation Awareness Week this year, please head to the website, which we'll put into the chat as well. Dave, I'm sure, will happily circulate it, but it's www.imaw.org. And there's lots of information. It's just been refreshed for the new year, more to come as well. But really, it's about getting the word of mediation out there and encouraging people that don't ordinarily know about mediation to get involved. Each day will be packed full with mock mediations, webinars, roundtables, keynote talks, networking sessions, and all of this is done by a massive group of volunteers who work behind the scenes to make it happen. Dave, thank you for that opportunity. If anybody's got any questions, do drop us an email.
Will, I think it starts on Monday the 7th of November, is that correct?
7th of November until the 11th, so Monday to Friday of that week. Yep, exactly, yep. That's right.
Okay, thanks, Will.
Thank you.
And the only other thing formally is the next meeting is going to be on Wednesday, the 11th of May. And Paul Adams, the CEO of the CMC, and I think also the new chairwoman, will be giving an update on what the CMC is doing. I think, Paul, you're on, are you? Are you with us, Paul? No, maybe not. Okay, so I'll send a save the date for that very soon.